minutes that the viewers have joined. All right, let me check the site and make sure. If I think my signal's a little bit low, but I don't think I'm going to lose my audio. If I do, I can. Let me make sure I'm on the right internet.
Yep.
See. Yeah, I am. All right, let me see here. We got Todd Medina page. I don't see any evidence of people in yet. Monique Hendrie. I just saw it. Yeah, okay. We got one in. That's me. So it hasn't hit yet. It's two. Kirsty Belleville's here.
Hi,
Yeah,
Christy.
so Beth Buslach is here. Leslie Ann Menzies. Rick Jewers is in the house. We just had a great show with Rick. Katie Endicrow is, I think Katie Endicrow's up late tonight. She's usually in bed by 8 or 9. Cricket Holden is Sia Ivania from Tasmania, who's going to be on, I think, Tuesday or sometime this week. Janet Gilliam, Lanny Reed, Jennifer Graham, Shaz Sass, who's I've seen a lot of your comments on YouTube, and thank you for that. And Linda Hickton from Saskatchewan, Canada. So the numbers are going up. We got 30 plus in the house. Terry Stacy. It's a really special show today. We've had our guest on before, one time, which was her first time, I believe, on camera, and maybe twice. I think she came on a panel one time. But Monique Hendrie is a very special soul, very special divine feminine, very good friend of my beloved partner Morgan Lee, and Monique has a special place in my heart because back in the day when we're still trying to find our way, but I remember getting knocked off Facebook 4 times in one day, and I jumped on YouTube and I was doing a show, and there was 3 people on, and Monique, unbeknownst to me and to Morgan, had been watching Soulogy for about a year, and she jumped on and said, "I'm with you, keep going." And I remember that and I always appreciate that. It was a very grounding moment and a very strong validation for me. So you've always, even though I haven't met you in the flesh, have carried a really a resonating place in my heart. So it's good to have you back, Monique Hendrie, South Australia. You carry a lot of unique sacred wisdom. I love your posts because they're very down to earth. They take into consideration the human part of us, which I believe is very important. Not that we're only human, but it's a very important part of us. Otherwise, in my opinion, why would we be most conscious in it 99% of the time? But so your stuff is really good. So it's been a great day of broadcast. And I think this is going to offer us a very unique perspective in the last hour that we close out our broadcasting today. So welcome to the show. Thank you for honoring us with your presence and sharing space with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And like I said before, you look very healthy and vibrant. Looks like you've been out in the sun quite a bit.
I have.
Yeah.
Well, it's very hot here today. It's 45 degrees Celsius, which I think is about 113 Fahrenheit. So, yeah, today's just been one of those quiet days where you don't want to move too much because you overheat.
I don't know what would be worse, 5 degrees Fahrenheit or 113 Fahrenheit.
5. Definitely 5.
So, I've noticed, I know you've been working a lot, and but I've noticed that the stuff you've been putting out, it's really been straight to the point, direct, strong, powerful, and also I think is a physical representation of the feminine energy, as Rick and I talked about, and Rick talked about on the previous show, beyond the reemergence, but the actual reality of that frequency stepping up now. And being put in its proper place to lead us further on up the road. So your stuff is very unique. Have you been? It's not a good question. You have been going through a lot of transformation. I know you abide by the rule of always taking everything into yourself.
Yes.
I don't know what's been going on with you since the solstice. That seems to be one of the more intense demarcation lines right up into today. This period has been very powerful. Have you been experiencing a lot of personal transformation, self-introspection, that type of thing?
I have, yeah. And the one thing I've found is I've really managed to dig my roots in deep down into the earth and really reinforce my earth connection. And I've always been quite grounded, but I found the last year, maybe just a little more, I kind of lost my ground quite a bit. And I found myself, flying in and out. The analogy I used was, those little super balls you get, the little rubber ones that you throw against the wall and it pings off in all directions. And you have to wait for it to stop because you just can't catch it because it just keeps going. It's its own force of energy. Well, that's kind of what the last year has been like. So closing out the year, December was really difficult. I had to go really, really deep into shadow. And unbeknownst to me, no, I'm going to go back further. A year ago, I connected with my teenage self in my shadow world, and she was venomous. She was an absolute viper, and I couldn't connect with her, and I had to leave her there. So come a year, a full circle, a full circle of our sun, and I got stuck. I went into my shadow world, and I got lost there. I couldn't find my way out. None of my tools, nothing that I've used to help myself worked. I completely lost my connection to everything, and I was lost in the shadows, and it was dark, and I was alone, and I was frightened. And so I called on a really wonderful friend and counsellor who I booked a session with, and she helped me navigate and find where I needed to go. Yeah, I didn't have my navigation senses. They were completely gone. So she helped me navigate to where I needed to go, and there I found my teenage self. Now, the venom had gone out of her. She was still a little vile, and she was angry. She was really pissed off. So I managed to go in and connect with her, and as soon as we connected, everything softened. Connecting with my teenage self a year ago had given her the opportunity to witness my journey throughout the last 12 months and grow her compassion for the adult me and what the adult me was going through. So, yeah, really reconnecting with her in December, everything changed. And it took me a couple of weeks after that initial connection for all of my residual bits to float away, to come up to the surface and be recognised and honoured and understood, and then to dissolve. And that completed, it must have been around Christmas. And just this bliss came in and took over. Yeah. And I was just, absolutely in my bliss for probably the next 2 weeks. So over the New Year period into January. And kind of like everything opened up fresh, sort of like the way I'd seen things before took on a fresh perspective. And in my journaling and in my writing, it's like she was the missing piece of me. She was that little piece that I'd left back there in the shadows, and now we've reconnected, and everything can be bright and colourful and new and fresh again. Yeah. So that's the history of where I've been. Now, I was lying down just before we came on, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, where am I now? What am I going to talk about now? And it's like, this image came to me. So take yourself to the beach, and it's a beach that's full of beautiful waves that you can body surf and all this sort of thing. And you try and swim out. And if you're swimming against the waves, you're getting pummeled and you're not quite making any headway, and you're getting pushed down and tumbled around and all of that sort of thing. And that's the energy we're coming out of. Yeah. And so, there's a couple of ways to go forward in my perspective. One is to dive down deep underneath the wave. It's tumultuous on the top, but underneath the surface is calm, and you're able to see things and go underneath it, and it's a lot clearer. The other way to ride it through is to find a rip, find a rip tide where the ocean's nice and calm, and you can go out on the rip. If you panic and you lose your footing and you try and swim back in through the rip, you're going to get tired. And, you're not going to be of any use to anyone. So swim out, follow it out, allow the energy to take you out. And then you can come back around and swim back in, and you get all that gold without having to go through all the turmoil. Yeah. And so it's kind of, that's where I am now.
It's a great analogy.
I can witness it, I can see it, and I can observe it, and I can ride it out, and then come back around and take the easy way and body surf with the waves instead of going against them.
You are, for all intents and purposes, a practitioner.
Yeah.
Of it, and you also assist people. A couple of people have asked already, what is shadow work? And then another question, does shadow work entail other things besides one's own unsavory sides in the past? I thought maybe if you're up for it, I mean, can you kind of take us through, because it sounds like the work you did a year ago that culminated in around Christmas with your teenage self was shadow work.
Absolutely.
Could you use that as an example?
Yeah.
And how you found her, what you did with her, and what came out of it?
Yeah. Shadow work is a journey. You can't go into your shadow and find any one thing. The shadows, it's like most things, it's layering. You got to go. I'm going to stop saying now. You've got to go in and you've got to uncover the layers. So you start off there it is again. You start off really gently with yourself, and whatever just rises to the surface. In my opinion, you work with your own shadow. You can have a facilitator that can come in and can assist you to work through your shadow, but your shadow is something you got to do on your own. Your shadow is your deep, your dark, the things you push down inside of you that you might not be strong enough to deal with at the time. And we all have them. We all have them, whether they're deep, dark shadows or whether they're just small surface shadows. We all have a shadow. A shadow is a good thing. It's a place where we go to learn and find our wisdom and find our story. I don't know if I'm running around in circles. Is this clear?
It's very good. Yeah, it's very clear.
Yeah, so go on.
And in respect to that, if we use your teenage self, three periods. One would be a year ago when you found her, and two, when it culminated around Christmas. You said she was still a little pissed off, but she was different. And then where does she stand now? Maybe that can give us another point of reflection in terms of understanding what shadow work is.
Oh, okay. So for myself, my teenage years are when I lost myself. When I lost my sense of identity. And I feel like since then, I've been swimming against the waves. Coming through probably into this last 7-year cycle, which has been, for all intents and purposes, my awakening on the ascension path. Yeah. So my teenage self got lost. She didn't know who she was. She didn't have solid direction. Went and did things that she probably wasn't real proud of if she had the chance to do them again, and they became shadows. And that built and culminated. So my teenage self is when I'd say my first real separation with myself began. And since then, it's been a culmination of those things that I've brought forward with me. And everything past that moment that I've suppressed is my shadow. So
do you feel like, oh, we have a little lag, I'm sorry. I was going to ask you, do you feel like that, because I think there is some congruence or some relationship with the individual as the collective's going, and then I'm just reflecting on my own situation over the last couple of weeks. Do you feel like that the teenage you that you found a year ago and worked with up until now was, in other words, when you found her and started to integrate with her and love her and understand her, do you feel like that was a pretty big domino that took out a lot of stuff with it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. My teenage self held all my pain and angst and all the nasty stuff. That's why she was an absolute viper a year ago, because she's just held all that, all that stuff that you just don't want to admit, you don't want to look at. We like to think that we're nice, white, fluffy clouds. Well, we're not. We're dark and we're ugly. And she was holding all of my darkness and all of my ugliness. And it took me a year of unraveling and going through some really deep and dark periods with her, to be able to unravel all of that, so I could then go back and bring her out of the shadow and bring her into the light.
What does she look like now?
Now she's having fun. Now she's playful again. She's that playful teenager who's going out and exploring and getting in touch with nature and rekindling relationships with people that I didn't have the depth or the courage before. She's really courageous. She has no fear. There's nothing holding her back. So reconnecting with her, I've lost all resistance. All fear has just kind of melted away, and we've been able to come into a really, really loving relationship, and it's expanding out through my immediate world, and just the shift in energy in my home, my family, my animals, everything around me is just so much brighter and lighter, because she's managed to reconnect and can't, leave her shadow where it belongs.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a great example of going back into what is shadow work, and you're talking about the shadow is a great place to learn to love and higher wisdom and such. That she, with the shadow that she brought, on the other side of it is this courage and this fearlessness that you'd been lacking, or you hadn't been in alignment with. And that's
absolutely.
A benefit of doing shadow work.
Yeah. Look, we can't really come to a place of healing within ourselves, and our wholeness, unless we do delve into our shadow. In my opinion, that's impossible. We have to go through, and we have to look at that darkness, and we have to love it. We have to love it out of existence.
Yeah.
There will be more shadow that comes up for me. I'm not saying that, there is no shadow that I cast anymore. Absolutely, I do. And there's probably a lot of things that I still have to learn in my shadow.
Yeah.
But this was a big one. This was pivotal for me.
Yeah. And it sounds
and
like
for me also, it ties up with puberty and, your own sexual awareness and what's been holding you back in those aspects and all of those sort of things as well.
Yeah. And it sounded like it came at a very important time too, as you approach 2019. That's kind of how I felt like what happened at the end of the year. I felt like we were being prepared, like the vessel was being emptied. And mine was more of a physical, primarily a physical thing, although there was a lot of energetic stuff that went with it. But it seems like then that's been something that I've noticed in the work I'm doing, that people spoke of in the latter part of December and the first part of January, where they're being cleared, I guess is another way to put it. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about too was, I know you've been on this path because when I met Morgan, y'all had met in a class, in a program. And so I didn't know you, but I was familiar with what you guys were doing, and obviously what you guys did that really didn't involve the classroom, you know. But so I know your personality, and I know you're very much a student, and you apply yourself. What has, because there are a lot of people. We had one on yesterday who just woke up 9 months ago and is struggling with the discomfort and struggling with the suffering and the pain. And so many of us get to a point where we want to just get out of here, even right up into the last couple of days for me. But my point is, how has it become easier for you to identify shadows and to work through the shadows? And also, how has it affected your relationships, in terms of externalizing, projection, and that type of thing?
Yeah. So I'm going to go for the last bit first. So externalizing and projection. I'd like to hope that I'm not projecting onto other people, but I think, I probably am still. But really it's recognizing when you're projecting, going, okay, this has to be about me. You hear everyone say it's always about you.
Yeah.
Whatever triggers you is what you've got to work on. So, for projections, and it goes both ways. Other people's projections, I'm just not going to take them on board. It's sort of like hold up your mirror and just go, I'm not going to play this part for you. I will walk away and I will come back once you've decided to take a look at yourself.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I don't love the person and care about the person and want to help them on their journey, but I'm not going to wear your projections.
Yeah.
Before, I very much wore everyone's projections. That was part of my path. I had such a low sense of self that I believed I was what other people told me I was.
Yeah.
And I internalized everything. I accepted everything. And
path of an empath.
Yeah. And I guess, for me, that's what's really solidified in this latest passageway.
Yeah.
It's like intellectually, how things are, but it's when it actually gels inside. It's when you actually know it from the inside out.
Yeah. And so would it be safe to say that as we remove shadow, we gain a wider awareness of what's being projected upon us and what we're projecting upon others?
Yeah, very, very much so. Very much so. It's all about awareness of self. As you become more self-aware, you're aware of other people's selves. I don't know. Does that answer it?
Yeah. And another thing too that comes to mind as I'm talking to you is because you always are so honest, and upfront. But it's and maybe in your own experience. I mean, you plugged in, you were aware up here, you were connecting, call it 5D plus, multidimensional, whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, you just said something, and you said you always took those things in, you believed them, you had accepted that conditioning and patterning. Is it possible for someone who's just waking up 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago to understand that they are connecting to infinite intelligence, but they also still have these deep-rooted shadows that they're dealing with that have affected their own self-esteem and image?
Yeah. Look, that's absolutely vital. You can't awaken to the information that's coming to you through channeling or from outside or higher wisdoms or any of those sort of things until you start understanding what programming and beliefs have been deeply ingrained into you. So, that's part of the journey is going back through, and, it's not all our parents' fault, but it's part of the journey going back through your childhood, going back through your life and really evaluating where your beliefs and behaviors come from. You know, that is the awakening path.
Yeah.
Is awakening to all of that program that's running inside of us. And we're at this beautiful opportunity now where we choose our programming. We don't have to accept what we're told. We've got all this information at our fingertips. We decide what we want to keep and what we want to throw away.
Yeah. And somebody also asked, and it sounds like this is what you did, so it goes along with the example you gave. Somebody asked, how do you, if you've had childhood traumas or events or phases that you shut down and have no memory of, so you're not conscious of it, how do you find those? How do you find that shadow? How do you find the gold beneath that shadow? It sounds like that's similar to what you did with...
Yeah, you just gotta persevere. You know, it's a long, hard road, and it is worth every minute of it. You know, going down, and it's a layering. You don't start with the deep and dark stuff. You start with the surface stuff. You start with the stuff that's really easy for you to understand and resolve, and you build your skills over time, so that as you go throughout your journey, you can go in deep with that deep, hard, ugly stuff, the hard, ugly truth that you need to tell yourself. And you have to be 100% honest with yourself. You know, you can't go, oh, well, that wasn't me, that was someone else. No, it's always you. You know, you have to be 100% honest with yourself. If you're not, you're going to keep running the same cycles, the same loop over and over again. Yeah.
And that's, I think that's got levels too. You know, it's a lot easier for us to accept things that are pretty cut and dry, that it was a result of our actions or whatever. But some things, it does take an expanded awareness, forgiveness, and so on, to accept that we created that for ourselves, even if we can't understand it from the human part of us.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, this for me is closing out a 7-year cycle. So for me, my big push into awakening came 7 years ago when my sister transitioned. So shortly before she transitioned, so we're back in 2012, I was sitting beside her bedside. Now, my sister, I don't know if you've heard of the term locked in. She was a consciousness locked inside of her body. She could not speak, she could not communicate in any other way except blinking her eye and sometimes with a lot of effort lifting her thumb. So this is how my sister was when I met her.
Wow.
I didn't know her as an able-bodied human. She was already like this when we met. So 12 years ago, I was sitting by her bedside and I was just streaming, flooding with tears. And our consciousness was having a conversation. And I promised her in that moment that I would get my body, my mind, and my soul healthy so that we could live a life together that she wasn't going to be able to fulfill. So that for me was the beginning of my journey in a big way. She was a master of consciousness. You know, she was this consciousness that was trapped for 5 or 6 years inside a body that just traveled to other dimensions. So she has been my guiding force throughout this whole journey. And so for me, right now is the end of a 7-year cycle, 2019, that was 2012. So this for me, I have fulfilled my pact, my promise to her, and we are able now to move forward in the realms of consciousness and in dimensions and create the world that we want to create.
Well, that's powerful.
Yeah.
So she's a conscious part of your daily life.
Absolutely. Wow. And until quite recently, and I sent you and Morgan a message. So our joint consciousness, I named Leilani.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
So, and until recently, Leilani was something separate to me. But it was the joint consciousness of me and my sister. Over this last month, maybe 6-week period, Leilani has integrated into me. So we're no longer separate. So this is where my bliss came in. So that was the purity in me. That was everything that was pure and beautiful and loving and light and all of these sort of things that's now integrated into me.
Wow. That's a powerful story. You know, people talk about soulmates, twin flames, celestial partners, or whatever, but it sounds like that's at a minimum a very important, significant soul contract for sure. And now you've embodied, which is interesting too, is you've embodied it.
Yeah. Well, it's all about embodiment. You know, we have to embody. This is my opinion, if we do not embody our experiences, we're doing a huge disservice to our human existence.
Yeah. That took me, and I'm still learning, but, you know, obviously your sister, I'm in a relationship with her. So y'all don't just talk the same, but you also have the same accent. But
yeah.
But I'd ask her over and over again, you know, over the last couple of years, I'd say, no, what does that mean again? What does embodiment mean again? And I really didn't start to understand it until the level of the respect I had for myself as my human aspect. You know, you can know all this stuff out there, you know, and the higher level of respect that I'm gaining seems to be have a parallel, which is the increasing the embodiment of the things that I've connected to and learned as an individual. But can you talk a little bit more about what is it at a human level? What is it to embody? What are we embodying, and what's the payoff of it?
Okay, that's a big one. Okay, so in my perspective, embodiment for me has been all of those parts of me that I cast aside upon my journey. Those broken, fractured splinters of my soul where I'd either had traumas or whatever, you know, and trauma can be anything for anyone.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be something horrible that's happened to you. You know, you could drive past a car accident and that is traumatic for you. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that happens to you, but it is something that you've witnessed in this world. And so embodiment is accepting and reintegrating all of those experiences, but then choosing the path you take forward.
Yeah.
So yeah. For me, true embodiment is accepting the prior experience that is in our cellular memory, in our DNA memory, in our body memory, in our mind memory, and integrating it all into one, and then choosing the experience that you go forward with.
Yeah. So like coming from a different perspective, a higher level of love and acceptance. And what are the what's the payoff? What occurs when we reintegrate that stuff, and bring it into one expanded me, you know, or you? What happens in our lives from that point?
Well, the immediate one is consciousness. We become conscious. We become conscious of every thought, every action, everything we do, and the effect that it has inside of ourselves and out. So, you know, once we're congruent with ourselves and we are accepting consciousness and we're making our thoughts and decisions from a conscious perspective, then that flows all around us. You know, in everything, in the energy in our house, in our relationships, in the way animals interact with us. It's everything.
Yeah, it sounds like a more solid and expansive personal energy field. Obviously, which obviously reaches far out further than our physical body.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And you know, and then we become the spark that ignites that in other people. You know, up until recently, I'd lost my voice. You know, I could say things in small pieces, but I couldn't have a conversation like this without tripping myself up because I'd lost my voice. I couldn't, in a sense, I couldn't think for myself.
Yeah.
And I couldn't put those thoughts that I did have out there into the world. So, you know, part of my embodiment is now I've got my voice back, my throat chakra is opened, and I'm now able to use my voice and affect other people in the world in a positive way.
Yeah.
Not from my brokenness, from my wholeness, from my embodiment.
For greater completion. Yeah, and I like what you said too, because I can resonate with that. You know, if you have a lot of aspects you haven't pulled in, even if you're getting mainline from the infinite intelligence, kind of hard to verbalize that because you are a bit scattered, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you find, you know, back to the waves again, the waves will come in really strong, tight sets. And so you're always trying to jump over the waves and you're always trying to get ahead of the waves, but you can never get ahead of the waves. You know, once you come to that place, you know, you're much more solid, you're congruent, you're riding the wave instead of being affected by the wave. So, you know, it's like a roller coaster ride, and, you know, you're up and down. It's sort of like 1 minute you're happy and everything's going well, and the next minute it's sort of like, oh my gosh, who just came and pulled the rug out from under me? and you know, you drop to the ground again. It's sort of like, and it's really frequent, you know, those highs and lows. And then the more aspects of yourself you bring in, the more congruent you are, the more you embody your own aspects, then the longer the waves are apart, and you just get to float on the surface and go, oh, look at this nice, peaceful, calm ocean.
Yeah, it's interesting though the way you describe that too, because what I find is that it does level off some, but at the same time, the intensity and the depth of, I don't want to call them the down moments, but the shadow revealing moments, or shadow revealing opportunities, they're so intense, and the depth of them is just so immense, and you're like going, wow, you know. I mean, I'm no longer saying, hey, when's it going to be over? But it just strikes me. But at the same time, to your point, you have an expanded awareness. You have more tools. You have more patience. You don't have so much self-judgment, and you're able to come out of it and get back up there and body surf.
Exactly right. And you know, after you've deep dived into the shadow, you know, 100, 1,000, however many times, you lose your fear of it.
Yeah.
You go, oh, okay, maybe it's not such a scary place, because look what happens after I've delved into my shadow. I come back out and I've got the gold. I'm dripping in gold, and it's all beautiful, and you know, it's worth it, worth diving into that shadow, because then you find the beauty, and it's not the fear that's holding you there, because you've transcended that fear.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, sometimes you get a big bucket of gold, and the next day you wake up and you're deep in the
the abyss again.
You're in the deep water, and like, that happened to me the other day, and I was like, I don't understand that. But time passes, I realize that you know, Morgan has a saying. She'll say to me, she said to me in the past, you know, when you're feeling this bliss and when you're in that creative energy, when you're riding the wave, that's the best time to go into, you know, into those deep waters, and you know, and sometimes you don't have a choice, which is what happened to me a couple of days ago. And I was just reflecting on it, thinking, oh, well, wait a minute. If I just stay with this and don't lose it or anything, and just work with it, there's going to be a big, beautiful pot of gold paying off.
Yeah,
which is what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very wise words, because if we resist going into our shadow, it's going to take us there kicking and screaming, and we're going to have a really difficult time down there. Whereas if we do go when we're feeling solid and we go, okay, I'm just going to have to go and explore this in my shadow now, it is a much easier transition, because we're not dragged there kicking and screaming. We do it voluntarily.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is great wisdom in that.
Well, too, and the other thing is, regardless of how much of a lifestyle that is for us, or any of us, and I want to ask you about that in a second, it's still, you never know. It's like, you open the door, you don't know what's going to happen. But one thing I can say about shadow work has, for me, and I think obviously it has to work this way for others, is the more you do, the less self-judgment there is. So when you get the kick in the pants, sometimes it is at a human level we don't understand. You're not beating yourself up. You're more focused on the resolution of it and the payoff.
Yeah, that's right. Digging into your shadow is really you teaching yourself to love yourself.
Yeah.
And every part of yourself, not just the good bits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, to reduce it right down. If it was only that easy, but yeah,
Well, Paul Handwriter was on earlier today, and he's talking sacred sexual therapy, basically. And he said that, I mean, you can't exclude any part of your body. He's talking the body. But we can talk bodies, etherical bodies, all the different bodies that make us up. But yeah, anything that is a shadow is to ignore it. It becomes a shadow. So yeah, you're right. I was going to ask you, as a student and as a practitioner, it sounds to me, and I would think that that it's a lifestyle for you. That expanding your consciousness is a lifestyle. It's a conscious effort and thought every single day.
Yeah.
How do you approach your days? I mean, do you have a certain routine, certain things that you found yourself on every single day? How would you describe expanding consciousness as a lifestyle?
Yeah, I guess, I do have periods where I don't maintain my practice. I work away, and I work really long days, and it's a really physical job. This is the one that pays the bills. And I can't always assign myself the time to connect and give myself the time I need to nurture myself. So when I do come home from work, I make sure I give myself that time. I am my priority. And if I make myself my priority, then it expands out to my family and all around me. So there are certain things I do every day. I have, oils that assist me every day. I don't drink coffee. I fail at minimizing my sugar intake. I've listened to my body. My body tells me how I need to live every day. My body has guided me in being able to sustain myself energetically. So my body has told me I can't eat meat anymore. So I've had to stop eating meat. And I went through a period just a couple of days ago where I tried to eat things and I just couldn't. Everything I put in my mouth tasted revolting. So I couldn't eat that day until late in the day. I found myself, eating a lot cleaner to support my body. Don't drink alcohol. I don't smoke. I don't do any of the things that are putting unnecessary toxins and extra work onto myself. So meditate, I always make time to meditate, whether it's with your eyes closed or whether it's doing the dishes or washing on the line. That's meditative. Make meditation something that you can do in your active world, not just in your still world.
Yeah.
Has been key for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And I have little rituals, you know. I see things on the ground and I pick them up and they become special. Whether it's a feather or a stone or whatever, it's little pieces of nature that I then can take with me through my day.
very good. And what about this word's becoming more and more prominent, less of a cliche and actually more of a reality, and that's energy.
Mhm.
And in the respect that there is, oneness is oneness, and everything is the same energy. Yet we're in this transition. How important, or what is your approach? How does it involve seeing things as energy? Do you see things as energy when you transform, and how do you do that?
That's interesting. I feel more than I see. I used to see, but now I feel more. So for me, it's very much a felt sense. Um, yeah, I definitely feel the energy in my body, in my emotional state, in my spiritual state, in my thoughts. So for me, it's very much a feeling journey. Um, and I just do everything I can to resolve everything in the moment.
As it comes up.
As it comes up, before things build and snowball. You know, it's not a perfect practice by any means, but I do my best to try and clear things constantly in my energy.
Do you struggle, or maybe the question would be for those who are just getting into this? What do you do when you come across the energy of something you feel is just not you? And I don't mean another person so much. I mean, just it could be a past memory or a trauma or a belief system or something that you're just so opposed to. How do you face something like that you feel you have nothing to do with, or you had nothing to do with it occurring to you, or whatever the case may be? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've really got to ask yourself the question: is this mine? Is this mine to carry and resolve? Or is this mine to acknowledge, love, and say, I'm going to send it back to where it come from?
Yeah,
You know, because not everything we feel is ours. And
yeah,
and a lot of the time it's not.
yeah,
So yeah, by simply asking the question and being aware enough, being patient enough. If you need stillness to get your answer to that question, then you create a still space.
yeah,
If you know you're far along in your journey and you're quite skilled at asking and getting immediate answers, then just simply ask yourself that question.
yeah,
And if it's not, then just as simple, I no longer accept this energy, and
yeah,
boom.
yeah.
But
Now,
you
now,
know, for me, I had to, in earlier in my journey, I had to have stillness to get my answer.
yeah,
I couldn't just get the answers.
yeah. I can think of, and we've all got the representation of this in our lives through other people, a family member, ex-spouse, brother, sister, whatever. And so I can remember for many, many years going into the stillness involving one family member, which I didn't really liberate, you know, myself from with Morgan's help, actually, till a couple of years ago. So these things, like as I went through all of this evolvement, it was very difficult for me I could bring them into oneness, and then it would slip back, probably because of an occurrence or something, or a memory called back up. But I think that's what I was getting at for some folks, because as I see their comments and I receive questions, they talk about, are they stuck on, how could this person have done this to me?
Yeah,
And there's no, and I know that's difficult.
yeah.
I just was wondering what your take on that was.
You just got to keep going. You just got to keep peeling back the layers. You know, it's not an instant process. You know, if you feel that you've been wronged by someone, and it might be recurring, it might be in the past, you really just need to be solid in yourself and keep saying to yourself, I'm just going to keep working at this until I find a resolution. And you can only ever find the resolution within yourself. until you get to a point where you can let it go. Whether that person is still behaving in that way or whatever, that's theirs to find. You need to come to a resolution within yourself and find a place of peace within yourself. And it's very gradual, sometimes a very, very slow process that you have to revisit over and over and over again. And you're on your knees going, when is this going to stop? When am I going to find the end of this?
More than once.
And it does. You get there.
And how important is it from your perspective, as we align and call in our other aspects from beyond just this incarnation? In other words, are some of these things, as people talk about, related to family lineage or previous incarnations? Which I think, how important is it to understand that sometimes it's not even based on this life experience, if that's even so? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think initially we relate everything to this life experience, unless we are getting very definite messages and visuals and very strong senses that it's from a previous life or whatever. But for me, I didn't know my ancestral history until 2010. I didn't grow up in the family I was born into. I was adopted. So for me, the ancestral was not a priority.
Yeah.
I have learnt that over time. And I guess, looking back, it all happens anyway. If we clear this timeline that we're in, it's going to filter back through previous timelines.
Yeah.
And it's going to flow forward and up and down in other dimensions and all of that sort of thing. To start off with, all you've got to focus on is here and now.
Yeah.
And then everything else comes as it's meant to and unfolds as it's meant to. And if you've really seriously done some self-work and resolved your own energetic issues, then the dimensions will open up.
Yeah.
And you will find yourself traveling in other dimensions, and you can then go and work in other dimensions and resolve things in this timeline.
Yeah. So clear everything from the core, and the rest takes care of itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
Self first.
Yeah.
Inside first.
Yeah. Thine own self be true. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. It's really been refreshing to spend this hour with you on a personal level. It was a great way for me to end this 2-day period and to end today. I love having you on. Always here to support whatever you're doing. All you got to do is hit me up or hit Morgan up and just say, I want to do something. I'll be always there to support you. You've been a big inspiration to me, and you've given me energetic, keep going, keep going many times. So.
That works the other way too. When I've been at low points and lost and things, just turning on Soulogy and seeing who you're talking to that day has helped me immensely. So, it's a two-way street.
Yeah, I'm glad. That's the way it should be. Equal energy exchanges. Is there a place that people can find you beyond your Facebook page, anywhere that you're putting your stuff out?
Yep. So I have a page called Soul Moves, and Soul Moves is primarily for just me to exercise me, and is also the way I try and attract clients. So you can either just come along for the ride, or you can get in touch with me via Soul Moves or via my own Facebook page.
Excellent. So Monique Hendrie, Soul Moves Facebook page, and also her personal page. Look forward to further collaborations. Thank you for honoring us with your presence, sharing space with us. I love you very much, and thank you for your role in my life on a personal level. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who's listened. Yeah, I appreciate all the support.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Unique. Thank you, everybody, for a successful day in broadcasting today. We have another day. I'm going to put the post out tomorrow with at least 3 shows. So thank you again, Monique.
Thank
Best to
you.
you
Bye.
and your family. You take care. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.